Well, good morning, everybody. This is Brian Dayton, and I'm with the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to take a minute and welcome everybody to the West Virginia Chamber's second part of the series for the Virtual Business Summit that we're doing this year. We have two extraordinary guests with us today. We're both so excited to hear from, and I'm watching the numbers roll in. We have great participation from Chamber members that are dialing in right now. So just want to take a quick minute. I thank everybody who's tuning in for this informative discussion today. Want to also give a special thanks to the many sponsors who are supporting the West Virginia Chamber's Virtual Business Summit Series. I know in the age of COVID, things are a little bit different this year. And in fact, Dr. Gee had a pretty good description of what it's like to helm a university during COVID, and I'll leave that for him if he wants to share it with the members. But I just want to go ahead without further ado, because I know both of these gentlemen, they have busy schedules, and we're delighted that they were able to be here with us today. I wanted to take just a second and introduce the two of them to those who are members. Dr. Marty Roth became president of the University of Charleston in July of 2018. Before coming to West Virginia, he was the dean and professor of management and marketing at the Barney School of Business in the University of Hartford. As a higher education leader, Dr. Roth has spent the past 30 years helping universities excel by focusing on the talent acquisition and development needs of both students and the organization. He has teaching and research expertise that is in global strategy, management, and marketing, and he has won numerous teaching awards. His research has been published in the leading marketing and management journals, including the Harvard Business Review, Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of International Business Studies, Journal of Consumer Research, the American Journal of Managed Care, and the Journal of International Marketing. He earned his doctorate and MBA and BA degrees from the University of Pittsburgh, and it's so nice to have him just across the river from the Chamber office at the University of Charleston. Our second speaker, or first, depending how they decide to do it, is Dr. Gordon Gee. He's one of America's most prominent higher education leaders. He's helmed universities for 4 decades, including WVU, where he is now, the University of Colorado, Brown University, Vanderbilt, and the Ohio State University. In 2009, he was named by Time Magazine as one of the top 10 university presidents in the United States. And just recently, the website Great Value Colleges named him the nation's top university president. He's the co-author of over a dozen books, including his 2 most recent, Leading Colleges and Universities and Land Grant Universities for the Future. We were honored to have Dr. Gee return to West Virginia University in 2014. It's the place where his career as a university president began. His leadership goals include putting students first, advancing the university's academic, research, and healthcare agendas, and partnering with West Virginia communities to make sure that the 1.8 million citizens of our state know that in their hearts and minds, that West Virginia University is their university. So without further ado, again, thank you to both of you for joining us here today. We're so glad to have you, and I will go ahead and let you take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And Marty and I tossed a coin yesterday, and I lost, so I have to start. So anyway, and I'm really, let me just say this. I'm very privileged to be able to do this with Marty because we represent really the spectrum of higher education, large public university, a smaller, focused private institution, both of us devoted to West Virginia and to making the state better. My friend Steve Roberts is on, I know, and I just think the world of him, and we're very blessed to have his leadership. And Steve always focuses on doing the right thing in the right way, and this virtual summit, I think, is really a brilliant thing to do. I just, many of you know that I travel the state every summer. I try to visit all 55 counties, and this summer I did a virtual tour. And I must say that you know, as someone who really believes in the human condition and the human contact, that I thought that this would not work, but I'm learning that we can have some effectiveness and efficiency in doing this. And I think that as an example, we know that at our university, about our productivity is up about 15%, if you can think about that. And we now know that out of our some 30,000 employees that work at the institution, probably several thousand of them will never come back into their offices. They'll continue to do their work from home. And that, to me, shows a sign of the times. Before I start, though, I just must tell everyone a very funny story, because I've been doing this for 40 years, and I went over. We live on the university campus, and I went over and visited with one of the residence halls. We do have freshmen in house here, and I walked around, and this woman, the young woman, came up from New Jersey, visited with me. I asked her how she was doing. She said fine, and I asked her if she was accommodating her life at the university. Yes. Do you like your room? Yes. Do you like your roommate? And she said yes. And then she asked me, she said, well, when you were in college, did you live in a residence hall? And I said yes. And she said, well, did you have a roommate? And I said yes. My roommate was Abraham Lincoln. And I could see her eyes kind of think about this for a minute. And then she said, well, did you guys get along? And so it shows how long I've been around. I told her, no, but I did attend Lincoln's inauguration. But anyway, it's so great to be with all of you. And it's so great to be in West Virginia right now. There's nothing quite like a born again West Virginian. You get that religious fervor about the state, and certainly I have it. Let me talk a bit about higher education, and then I'm going to turn to Marty. And then we really do want to take questions. That's what we agreed was the real joy of being able to do this, is get really smart people on this, like on this call, to ask questions. So what we have now is we have, in my 40 years, I've experienced pestilence, people taking over my office, getting fired. I've experienced everything. But I've never experienced a pandemic, and I must say that it has been terribly disruptive. But it's also been a time of real opportunity to energize ourselves and rethink the nature of higher education. What we're dealing with right now, we're dealing with kind of 2 or 3 or 4 pandemics, and universities are really centered in this. The first one, obviously, is the unseen virus, which is not a friend to any of us, and it comes in strange and exotic ways, and we're trying to manage it and also continue to have some semblance of an educational experience that is important for our students. The second pandemic is the one that we don't talk about, which is the what I would call the collateral damage. And that is the fact that the suicides in this age group are at their highest level. Depression has never been greater. 10 years ago, when a national survey asked what students felt about their mental health, about 10% said that they felt like it's a mental health challenges. About 70% do now. So that's the second pandemic. And one of the reasons that we wanted to start in class teaching was the very fact that social commerce, parents don't want their kids in their basement, and kids don't want to be there. And so that notion of getting together. The third one we have is obviously the financial issue. The financial strains on universities and colleges are immense. In our own instance, because of the fact that our budget has been reduced over the last several years by about $40-50 million. Now that doesn't sound like a lot on what is $1 billion for the university and what is $4.5 billion with our academic medical center, but yet that goes directly to the quality of what we're trying to do. But just the expense of dealing with all the cleaning and all of the other kinds of things. So the expenses are immense, and then the expenses and the financial strain on families is just unprecedented, and we need to understand that. Then obviously we have the challenge of social unrest, which is immense on a university campus. And I'm certain that Marty feels that also, but the conversations we're trying to have to make certain that our students understand that we're supportive of their needs and wants, but at the same time that we don't become a place that is full of cancel and cultural dysfunction. I think that's important. And that's my final point, is the fact that we also need to understand that universities are places in which ideas must be welcome. And this notion of us not being open to ideas or not having the kind of quality of ideas and conversations, good, bad, and important and Nobel quality. The ideas need to be welcomed on university campuses. The minute we don't allow that to happen in some form or other, then we've lost our ability to call ourselves a university. There are three types of institutions: those that will not survive, and I think about 1,000 of them ultimately will not survive out of about the 5,000 institutions in the country because of the fact that their financial and social model just is not working. The second are those who will survive. Survival, I don't think, is anything that either Marty or I or any university president wants, but that means, and they'll survive because of the fact they hang on. They hang on to tradition, they hang on to history, they hang on to the way things were rather than the way that things should be. And then there are the thriving institutions. I like to think about my own university as being out in the blue water, a big ship out in the blue water, no one around us. We need to differentiate ourselves. We're in West Virginia. We do some things better than anyone else. We will do some things in a very important way that will make a difference to the state and to our institution. And so the gift of the pandemic is the gift of the opportunity to really finally challenge the norm, because there will never be we'll never go back to normal, nor will we go back to new normal. I think this is a new world, and what we thought about would happen in universities and colleges over the last 10 years, or over the future 10 years, has been collapsed into 10 weeks. And that is the truth. So our business model is up in the air. Our opportunity to educate in a different way is available, and I welcome this. But it also is what Brian said. He asked me what it was like running a university. I said running a university is like catching a javelin. You never know where it's going to come from. And so there you go. So Marty, your turn.
Great. Thanks, Gordon. And thank you, Steve and Brian and Kathy, for putting this great event together. I know we all really enjoy being at the Greenbrier for the annual business summit, and regret that we can't be there together in person, but this is the next best thing. And we're all getting to be Zoom experts to some regard. So it's great to have so many of you here with us. And I want to echo Gordon's sentiments that we really do welcome your questions. We want to know what's on your mind with regard to higher education today and higher education in the future, and do our best to both answer your questions and learn from your perspectives. So I think Gordon summed up our world today pretty well. We're living in an age of multiple crises or multiple pandemics. And I think it's important to put it into context that even before the things that Gordon articulated so well, we're in the midst of a demographic shift here in West Virginia, in our region, and frankly across the country, where we've been experiencing a kind of slow to moderate decline in the number of high school graduates. And that's actually accelerating and will kind of reach its peak or trough, depending how you look at it, around 2026. So when times were good before the pandemic, we were all struggling with just having less demand for our core services, which are the types of educational programs that we traditionally deliver to high school graduates in a campus-based experience. So a number of institutions like WVU, like UC, have been at the forefront of diversifying our portfolios. So we now serve just about as many adult learners as we do traditional college-age students. That segment of our business continues to grow very well. But it's a very different business. And one of the things I try to describe to folks is as we talk about how much we've become adept at serving the needs of the adult worker who typically wants to engage with us remotely through online learning and so forth, is, we're used to running a Barnes & Noble. We bring people to our campus, we have high touch experiences, they sit down, they have a cup of coffee, someone asks them how they're doing, the president goes to the residence hall like Gordon describes. It's a very high touch, high impact type of service. Well, when we're working with adults who are engaging with us online, they expect us to be Amazon. They want the service when they want it, how they want it, at a very competitive price. And it's been a challenge for universities like ours to figure out how to master both of those business models simultaneously. So while that was going on and we were starting to get pretty good at that, then the pandemic hits and the various challenges that Gordon articulated. So I don't want to repeat the things that Gordon mentioned, but maybe give you a couple examples of how our future is changing as we go. And literally the pace of change is so fast, so furious, so relentless, that's really what happens. I think often of the old African proverb, don't test the depth of a river with 2 feet. Well, that's not really an option, and we're not even being able to dip our toe in. We're up here on a boulder, and we got to jump in, and we have to figure out how to best serve our students and our employees and keep everybody healthy and safe and add value. So last year, we did a couple of things which were, I think, great for our institution, great for our community, yet at the same time, we've had to change them pretty significantly due to COVID-19 and the way the world around us has forced us to innovate and adapt our processes. So last year, when we had a summer retreat in the summer of 2019, our leadership team, which does a great job of keeping their thumbs on the pulse of our students, said, we really probably need to be a little more thoughtful about issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're fortunate, we really don't have any dust-ups, we don't have any protests, things like that. But nonetheless, we have a pretty diverse student population here. 30 to 40% of our students, full-time undergraduate students, are students of color or many first-generation students, and so on and so forth. And as all of us know, living here in West Virginia, that's really not the composition of our workforce. So we just thought we need to make sure that all of our faculty, all of our employees just are starting to get a little more comfortable understanding the diverse backgrounds that our students come from and ways that they can communicate more effectively with our students. So we put together a series of professional development workshops in which our community engaged. And it really was great in improving kind of our awareness and our understanding of issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we decided we were really going to deep dive into those topics on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So as a private university, we often have classes on major holidays like that. So we canceled all of our classes and we put together a full day of activities around those topics. And it was a great day. We watched a movie together, had discussions, brought all kind of panelists in from the outside. And it was a really thoughtful day. And I think everybody felt like they learned a little bit more from the day's experiences that they had when they woke up in the morning. Well, lo and behold, fast forward, we move into not only COVID-19, but we move into this period of great concern around social injustice. And a lot of schools really faced protests and faced a lot of tensions on their campuses. And fortunately, I think our students and our employees felt like we understand this issue a bit, and we don't have to kind of get up in arms to have productive, intelligent conversations about it. So now what do we do next year? Well, certainly these issues have not gone away. We need to continue to focus on social injustices. But as Gordon mentioned, there's other important pressing issues. Mental health has become a real challenge. Where we want to echo Gordon's comments there, and we're realizing that that's another topic that we're going to need to weave into this conversation to help us live our mission of helping our students become enlightened and live productive, fulfilled lives where they have good understanding of the contemporary issues that they in our society face. Another example I'd like to share is last year, we also decided to make a deeper commitment to another pillar of our mission, which is community involvement. So we once again canceled classes. Students are loving all this. We canceled classes on Labor Day, and our entire community participated in what we now call our Labor of Love Days. So we had students out in the city of Charleston, the surrounding area, picking up trash, painting curbs yellow, walking dogs at the Humane Society, just doing all kinds of things in the spirit of giving back to our community. So it was a really great day. Everybody felt like it was a good opportunity to contribute. Then we went down to Power Park for lunch and watched a ball game. Well, what do we do this year? Labor Day 2020 rolls around. I can't put 50 students on a bus. We don't really want them roaming around in packs, picking up trash as much as we'd love to provide that service. We have to do social distancing. People need to wear masks. We have to keep everybody healthy and safe. So instead, what we did is we spread the activities across 4 days. We took the entire Labor Day weekend. So we had small groups or pods of students working on projects, and most of the work was done here on campus. So they were writing letters to frontline healthcare workers, thanking them for their service. They were writing cards to residents of long-term care facilities, just as to cheer them up and break the monotony when they're not allowed to have visitors in today's world. They put together care packages, blankets for the homeless, and so on and so forth. So we're able to accomplish some of those same things to really live our mission, but we had to find out ways to do them differently. And that's really, I think, where higher education is right now. We know that we offer great value to students. We help them pursue their professional goals, their personal goals and ambitions. We help expand and provide them with transformative experiences, but we just have to do them in very different ways than we've had in the past. In ways that those students and their families, in a sense, our customers, really feel like they're getting value from the tuition, the room, and the board, and the time that they invest with our institutions. So lots going on in the world of higher education. I think Gordon and I could probably talk all day just on health and safety issues, and we'd be happy to do that as well. I know both of our campuses have put enormous amounts of time into doing everything that we can to make sure that our environments are healthy and safe ones for our employees and our students. But it's been a roller coaster ride, and as I described to folks, our typical summer in higher education is a time to take a step back. You reflect on your accomplishments from the previous years, do some planning for the future, and so it's kind of like a little bit of a 10K over the summer. Well, with the demographic changes, the economic pressures, summers have become a little bit more like a marathon. Well, this year it's been an Ironman competition, and unfortunately, we're not seeing the pace of that really slow down. And I'm sure it's the same in a lot of your organizations, but Gordon and I were chatting a little bit yesterday. I think our biggest concern, the thing that keeps us up at night, is how long can our institutions keep up the pace, particularly our senior leadership teams, who are not only doing their day jobs, but they're helping large institutions figure out new processes and new programs to help everybody be healthy and safe, at the same time making sure that they have a great experience at our institution. So never a dull moment here in higher education, but you don't wake up in the morning wondering if you're going to have anything interesting to do today. You just wonder if you're still going to be standing at the end, given all the things that are going to come across the transom. So I'll stop there with my remarks, see if Gordon wants to jump in with any other thoughts. And again, we're happy to entertain questions.
Well, thank you both, and we really appreciate it. We have some questions starting to come in. In a minute, I'm getting ready to hand it off to my colleague, Kathy Thomas, to moderate the Q&A. So just for those who are listening in, if you have questions, please type them in at the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can just click that and type in your question, and Kathy will be happy to ask it. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kathy right now for her first question. But again, thank you both. That was excellent.
Good afternoon. We would like to thank President Gee and President Roth for joining us today. And we're very fortunate in West Virginia to have these strong education leaders with us. Our first question, and I'm going to give it to Dr. Gee first, and then maybe we'll let Dr. Roth go at it too. How can business help with your mission?
That is a home run ball, I think, for both of us, because business is our business, for one thing. Universities and colleges we don't produce widgets, we don't produce cars. we produce people who then produce ideas and make a difference in the lives of people, and obviously doctors, teachers, etc. But one of the things that I think that this pandemic is going to particularly show is the fact that we need to have a much stronger relationship between business, industry, and universities and colleges. And it should not simply be that we provide services or we provide people. It really needs to be a true partnership where business provides opportunities for internships, externships, where we provide particularly tailored courses for those businesses, where we have stackable credentials. I was talking yesterday with someone from the Department of Defense about developing certification programs so that folks can get these certifications in very specific areas, in the STEM area, in the cyber security area, and build upon those while they still might be getting a more generalized educational degree. And obviously, the truth of the matter is that none of us can afford to do what we're doing separately. We all have to put in our time and energy to make sure that we are working very closely to make this nation competitive. I often point out that there are only 330 million members of our country, our population, whereas there are 1.4 billion Chinese and about the same number of Indians. So if just on the scale we're going to lose unless we're able to outthink and outperform. And I think that we all know that there are tremendous challenges in that regard. So in many ways, universities and colleges have become the economic engine of this country, yet we do not partner as well with business and industry as we should. That needs to be the new normal.
Yeah, and I'll just echo, I think Gordon's spot on. I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is how critical it is that we partner effectively with more stakeholders than we probably have had to in the past. So for example, as we work through the myriad of health and safety issues, each institution across the state has been working very closely with our local health department. We're all tied in with the governor's office, DAHR, the Higher Education Policy Commission. And they've been important resources for us to help us best understand our options, give us feedback on our strategies. And we need to know what policies and procedures that they feel are important for us to keep our institutions open. So I just think that's one example of how I think we're all developing a little bit of a broader view of how we need to manage our organizations and how our organizations, kind of have impact, more broadly, or in addition to the traditional great work we do for our students. I think we're fortunate here at UC. Our mission has 3 key pillars that we're going to educate each and every student for a life of productive work, enlightened living, community involvement. So that productive work pillar of our mission dovetails, is very well aligned with working closely with business. We have a lot of healthcare programs. We're very tied in with partners in the healthcare industry for externships, clinical rotations, and so forth, a robust business school. All of our students are doing internships and so forth. So we're very externally focused, very business focused. And I think the question's spot on. I think if successful universities, the ones that don't want to be in those first 2 groups that Gordon mentioned earlier, really need to probably up their game with regard to demonstrating how they're adding value to key partners that want to support their institutions.
Okay, that's great. Thank you both so much. Our next question is, last week, Brad Smith talked about the importance of students learning how to think through and develop scenarios for the future so crises can be managed and headed off. He called this design thinking. How do you see the universities teaching this or developing curriculum to do this?
Well, of course, I listened to Brad last week, and I was inspired by what he had to say. And and I've talked to him a lot about his own thinking in this regard. And I think that is the new approach the universities need to take, is that we really do need to design our curricular structures. We need to encourage and develop faculty modules where people really are focusing on future issues and creating value in each of the things that we are doing. And I will also point out, and I know that Brad would agree with me, that some of the things that we thought were sort of disappearing, the humanities, the social sciences, they are going to become increasingly important again in this new world, because of the fact that the one thing we know, and for the employers here, you want to hire people who can write and who can think and who can be strategic. And that is important because of the fact that the world is so fast. Knowledge is doubling about every 12 to 18 months right now, which means that one cannot keep up with what is happening on the ground without having the ability to be able to think and work in that regard. So that kind of design thinking, where we're constantly trying to look around corners and find the best pathway, given the fact that we can't see what that pathway is at the moment, is I think going to be the new approach to education.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And one of the things that we're seeing has evolved over the past probably 5 years or so is the whole notion of innovation in and of itself is becoming like a young academic discipline. There's a science and there's an art behind it. And people feel very passionate about that. That's why, Brad Smith makes a significant investment in his alma mater of Marshall, John Chambers at WVU, the Worleys, their support of the incredible innovation center that we have here at UC. But what we're finding is it's one thing to kind of have the building and, to have the nice facilities, but we really have to have the programming behind it. So we do incorporate design thinking into our innovation minor, into our entrepreneurship major, and we really try to do it in a thoughtful way. So it's not just for students that are studying in any one discipline. We try to design our innovation minor to attract students from all different types of disciplines. In fact, the West Virginia State Business Plan competition, we've been fortunate to have quite a few students as finalists and winners of the competition, and the majority of them have come out of our pharmacy school, not necessarily out of our business school. So they're taking advantage of the fact that we're helping them understand that you have a great idea. There's a method behind the madness and how you take that idea, expand it, and really start to develop what type of commercialization opportunities that idea might have. So we're trying to be very thoughtful about that and recognizing that those are just important life skills, because to the question that was asked, we need to apply this thinking not only to great business ideas, but how do we solve these conundrums that we're facing today, such as global pandemics, climate issues, social injustice. We need the great minds to think innovatively about these important pressing problems.
That's great. We have our third question that just came in, and the question is, what are the likely changes and look of your respective institutions in the next 3 to 5 years? And some examples might include the demand for online campus housing, your mission, the cost of education, public funding, and online learning.
Sure, I'll break the tradition and go first on this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Marty, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's another terrific question. So I think in the short term, we're anticipating experiencing the same growth, year-over-year growth in our online and adult learning markets. So we'll continue to look for ways that we can better serve those students, whether it's expanding, programs that would attract those students, or, excuse me, my phone must have thought I said Alexa. So whether or not we can identify new programs to meet their needs or enhance the services that we offer and so forth. There's certain areas where I just don't see that we'll be making any significant investments anytime soon, and that would include residential housing. You know, we're blessed. We're at well over 95% capacity right now, but it's hard to imagine in today's environment that would kind of make its way high enough on the priority list to incur the capital investments that would be required. Instead, what we're thinking about is what are the additional programs that we could offer in which we think there's student interest, where we know there's a robust employment market, and an employment market here in West Virginia and in the surrounding area, because we certainly want to serve the students here and try to keep the bright students that come to us from around the country and around the world. We want to try to keep them here in West Virginia. So that's an area where we're more likely going to invest, but it's just different today. So for example, one of the programs that we're looking into is an advanced healthcare degree. It's a type of a program, terminal degree in a field, and the instruction has always been done on campus, in seat, with some clinical learning experiences. Well, today we're thinking, how can this program be designed right out of the gate so it's more of a blended or a hybrid type of a program? So students don't necessarily have to be here on campus for all of the instructional components, that we can deliver some of that instruction remotely as well as here on campus, because that'll have implications for what type of facilities we need to have in place to serve those students, and it'll also have implications on what type of technology we need to make sure that those students will have an outstanding experience. So the traditional model of thinking about, we want to bring more and more students to campus, we're seeing tremendous pressure on that model today. And one of the advantages that that we have as a smaller institution with about 1,500 students here on Charleston and another 200 down in Beckley is we're much better able to manage health and safety issues than the type of institution that Gordon's trying to run, where he has 20 or 30,000 people all converging in one location and trying to figure out, how do I keep all of those people healthy and safe? It's a really big challenge. So, do I really want to bring more people to my campus? Do I want to try to serve them in ways that they're more comfortable and that I can make sure that they're able to achieve their personal and professional goals? So it's really changed the way that we think about innovation and growth.
I think that I'm just going to add just a couple of thoughts to what Marty said. One is that I think all of us are going to have to, I think everyone on this Zoom call is going to have to do the very same thing. We're going to have to sit down, have a very honest conversation with ourselves and our colleagues about what have we learned and how can, from this pandemic. One of the things that I can tell you right now that I've learned, my idea of a quiet evening at home is having 400 people for dinner. Well, I can't always do that anymore. And so what we can learn is the fact that we can use these kind of technologies for teaching and learning that we had never thought about, and for doing business and doing a variety of other things. Yesterday, we have a marvelous partnership with the Royal University for Women in Bahrain, and I was on with I'm a member of their board of governors. I was on with them. We got a lot of business done. I'm in the middle of a call with the National 4-H Council right now in between what I'm doing, and so we have a lot of opportunities. At the same time, I just sent a note off to my Big 12 colleagues, the presidents of the Big 12 institutions, because we had a Zoom call on Monday evening, and you just look at people and you can tell they're exhausted. That this Zooming is taking a lot of personal attention and an inability to be able to really engage in that in this kind of lively conversation. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to learn that this is a new world that we're going to balance. The second thing I would say is that we're going to have to really learn a lot more about our students. The millennial generation that has just graduated, these are the sort of the 25 to 35-year-olds, they really had a particular point of view, and we really did have to start tailoring the educational enterprise around that. The chasm between the millennial generation, the Z generation, those that are coming in right now, is huge. There's never been a greater chasm. These kids look at the world 180 degrees differently than anyone else. 40% of them don't ever want to work for anyone. They want to all be entrepreneurs. They want to do a variety of other things. And so we're going to have to start through this hybrid notion that we have of teaching online, of teaching in person, and teaching in flex models. We're going to have to learn to deal with the students that we have. The final thing is that I'll just say that, you know, there's this constant tension between the brick university and the click university. I saw a young lady on the on television not long ago. She said, she said, I'm here in my pajamas, I'm getting a college degree. And I'd like to reach right through the damn television and grabbed her out and said, young lady, you're not receiving an education. You might receive a degree, but the educational component of this is really that personal relationship. It's the late night pizza parties, it's the conversations that take place. It's all of that that really is the essence of a true educational experience. So we have to balance that out also. There you go, Kathy.
Wow, what a great answer. All right, our next question is, as innovation is key to business and entrepreneurship, especially during the pandemic, what types of new notations are both universities finding that are surprising or might become your focus?
Marty, your turn.
So I think one of the things we're finding is we're trying to, through kind of social distancing measures, we're trying to keep students in smaller groups. And while that has kind of physical and logistic challenges, it has some real kind of learning advantages. If we kind of think about some of the kind of learning experience that have been the most impactful on us, you know, they typically wasn't the rock star professor in a 200 or 300 seat lecture hall. And while there are certainly faculty that are great in teaching in that mode, the kind of the signature experiences that most people have had tend to be more personalized, and more kind of intimate settings. And there's been a wealth of research to demonstrate that people's adult quality of life has been significantly impacted by having somebody play a significant mentoring role in their college life and in their experiences. So I think one of the great things that we're finding is, as much as it's challenging to figure out ways to keep students into smaller groups, it's really giving us an opportunity to interact with them in potentially more meaningful ways. And that was one of the things that came out of our Labor Day experiences. So rather than send 20 or 30 students off together to perform a community service project, we were doing it in groups of 10 or 12. So even though they're 6 feet apart and they're wearing masks, it gave them an opportunity to share in that experience at a richer level than they were able to do previously. So I think that's one innovation that we'll probably try to carry forward is, you know, how can we continue to build scale? Scale is important. You know, that's, you know, in an era where we know the students are more price conscious. There's more competition, putting pressure on our tuitions and our fees and so forth. You know, so we need to generate volume in order to try to bring in the revenues that will sustain our institutions. Being able to work with larger groups of students, you know, larger numbers of students, but in smaller groups, I think is going to be a real key to the innovation puzzle for universities to continue to add value and provide an experience that's, you know, markedly different than that student in her pajamas who decides that being 100% online is, you know, is really satisfactory to help them achieve their goals and objectives.
Yeah, I'm just going to add another dimension to this. I'm going to add the word disruption. I know that sometimes is overused and overhyped, but this has been a disruptive moment for us, all of us. We hammered ourselves by shutting everything down. Our economy went to hell in a handbasket, as we all know, and we're still trying to pull out of that. But what I think that we've learned also is that disruption could potentially be our friend if we learn how to deal with disruption from the outside, and we would be disruptors ourselves. Let me give you an example if I can. So between World War II and about 1960, 1965, we eradicated polio and mumps and measles and a variety of other things. Then all of a sudden we started having these new things come along, SARS and MARS and AIDS, and then the COVID issues. The world has gotten very small, and we're no longer immune from being able to build Fortress America or even being able to build bubbles around ourselves. And so we have to deal with those disruptions by being disruptive in terms of the way that we think. And the way that I like to think about it as a dance. Right now, I'm in a dance with this virus. And so I started off in July thinking I'm going to dance the foxtrot. Now I'm dancing the waltz, and I may next week have to dance the rumba. But I've got to be very agile and very forward thinking and very disruptive in the way that I'm doing things in order to be able to meet those challenges that are coming forward. So I think that Marty's absolutely right in terms of the way that we configure ourselves, the way that we think about how we teach and learn and what we do. But I also think that the disruptive side of this is important. And by the way, I think that that's the great advantage. I'm going to say something that people are probably going to shut off. Steve, if they all drop out of the chamber, I'll try to cover some of the costs by coming down and washing dishes. But I think that we're going to discover that the coronavirus, the pandemic, will be one of the greatest gifts to West Virginia that we've ever experienced. And the reason for this is very simple. We're a small state with great beauty and great capacity and great people. People are fleeing from the vertical cities, fleeing from the kind of safety concerns and so forth that exist there, and they want to come to places in which they can plant a flag and plant a family and become truly engaged. And so we have an immense opportunity in this state to take full advantage of that. We need to do some things. Our fast forward and West Virginia Forward concept. We need to get broadband in every nook and cranny of the state. We need to do a number of things. But guess what? This big disruption is going to allow us to disrupt what people have thought about West Virginia. We need to turn from cold to cool. And we need to do that very fast. And we have that immense advantage right now. So I just want to add that as a notion for us to all chew on. Kathy?
I'm here. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties.
I thought we disrupted you.
No, everything was falling over. Sorry about that. I think this next question is a fantastic question. As a result of the pandemic, are either of your institutions experiencing a change in college readiness for incoming students? And along with that, are either of you concerned about the quality of education outcome between virtual and online, especially with more tactile degrees like health sciences?
I'll try that. I think absolutely. I mean, I think that one cannot have a great university or a great college, public or private, without having a strong public education system. It's just that simple. 80% of the kids in this country are educated in public schools and public colleges, and if we allow those to be diminished, if we don't strengthen them, if we don't do the right thing, then I think that is a real challenge. I think what we'll find out is the same thing we're finding out in our universities and colleges, and that is the fact that the online and the shutdown experience has both some good and some ill effects. I think that we've learned a lot from the use of technology and all of those mechanisms that we talked about. I think we've also learned that the that the in-class and the human experience is enormously important to the body politic, to the psychology of the educational experience. And to think that one can do all of this virtually. Now, we do have a lot of homeschooling, and I think that is done very effectively. But still, I think that notion of being engaged in those in-class and out-of-class experiences are going to remain enormously important in moving forward. But I will come back to where I started. We have to make certain that the quality of our public schools match the beauty of our mountains. Until we do that, we're not going to be able to truly grow. The other thing, of course, and you've all heard my old joke about the fact that we need to build a wall around West Virginia and keep all of our kids here. And we really do need to do that. I don't care if Ohio pays for it or not. We just need to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a important issue that we're facing. I know we've upped our investment in being able to assess students when they first arrive on campus, various types of assessments and inventories, to really be able to baseline where they are and make sure that they are getting into the appropriate classes to get their college education off on the right track. It's a real issue. As much as there's great minds thinking about ways to improve K through 12 education, both public, private, charter, so on and so forth. What we see on our end is huge variance. You can have two students coming out of different schools with identical transcripts, and those students are not ready to start college in the same place. So we're finding that we really need to be very proactive there, because one of the kind of real metrics that drives our business is we call first year retention. So what percentage of the students that start with us in the fall of 2020 are going to be back with us in the fall of 2021? And just like all of your businesses, it's a heck of a lot more expensive to attract a new customer than it is to keep an existing one. So we want to keep those students. Those students chose our institutions because they thought it was the best fit for them. And we're taking on a responsibility that if we awarded admission to that student, that we're going to help shepherd them through their educational journey. So we want to hang on to as many of those students as we can. But if the first 4 weeks, the first 7 weeks, the first semester goes sideways for them, chances are they're not coming back. And not only may they not come back to my institution, that may have disenfranchised them from pursuing a college degree, at least in the foreseeable future. So that hasn't added any value to them, really driving our economy as a knowledge worker. So we find that we have to really up our game in really assessing students where they are. And as Gordon said, we'll do what we can. We have great education programs within our institutions. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we're providing great insights and human capital to help K through 12 education. But in our world, we need to make sure when students come to our institutions, they're going to be successful. And I was having a conversation with one of our students this week, asking her, how has it been for her transitioning as a now junior here at UC, from doing all of her classes in seat to doing some things that are more hybrid and remote based. And she said, it really hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. It wasn't something I was looking forward to, but most of my online experiences have been with professors that I previously had in seat. So she had already developed a relationship with those professors. She knew them. She had confidence in her ability to be able to communicate effectively with them. And that's one of the big differences between the traditional college age market and the older adult learner. The older adult learner has probably had some type of post-secondary education. They've gone to community college. They may have earned a bachelor's degree at a traditional college setting. So they kind of know the ropes. They know what it's like to master college level material. So now it's an issue, are they comfortable doing that remotely? And that's a personal decision. For a 17 or 18-year-old, really up until this year when they had to, get pushed out of their high school and finish their senior year remotely, they really hadn't had the opportunity to do a lot of online learning. And for them, those personal relationships are really critically important. So the idea of the traditional undergraduate market going remotely in any highly scaled way, I think is probably not the best formula for success based on what we're seeing, what Gordon has shared with you today, what we're seeing in UC and more broadly, what the research is showing about the fit of online education for younger audiences. Back to you, Kathy.
Great. Thank you both so much. I think Steve Roberts is going to join us.
Thank you. And this is my opportunity to say thank you to both of you and to all of the people who have tuned in. We've had a very large number of people who've tuned in. I have 3 questions that are front of mind. However, I'm going to hold them and I'm going to dangle this carrot out. This has been so interesting and so enlightening. Catching javelins, Amazon delivery system for returning to school. That's a euphemism, I suppose, for older students. The whole idea of talking about social justice, inclusion, and diversity as being right out there and right up front in terms of a university's mission. A couple of observations, and I don't want to talk too long because what I really want to ask, okay, now I'll say I have 4 questions, and I'll make my 4th question my first question, which is, will you come back and do this again? And then I'll ask my other 3 questions. This has just been fascinating. I would really love to get into the issues of how we get the doors open for, I'm going to say young people, but students, potential students in West Virginia who are simply intimidated by higher education, but who really need to avail themselves to those opportunities. And can we look at models that perhaps have worked in other places? Secondly, I'd be interested in your thoughts about what I would say is a chamber belief related to public education that all children need to be reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. All children need to have a caring adult in their lives, and all children need adequate time to learn, and that time for learning is different for different children because we all learn a little bit differently. And finally, how can we as business people really do a better job of being in communication with you about where we see job openings and job opportunities, because we want to keep you are doing a fantastic job. We want to keep your graduates here. I have a niece who graduated summa cum laude from Dr. Gee's University, and she had so many opportunities to go out of state that she just couldn't resist. And first of all, that was an opportunity to brag about my niece and about Dr. Gee's University. But secondly, we really need some of those kind of folks to be here with us. So those are things that I would like to come back to. I just tee them up to perhaps pique your curiosity, but more importantly, to cause our audience to say, yes, I'll tune in again if we get to do this again. So I guess I'll just punt to question number 1, which is, hey, could we do this again? Because this has just been fascinating, and I think is really the roadmap to the future for West Virginia.
Well, I can certainly say, Steve, that I feel really privileged to be on this, with this conversation with Marty and with all of you. You know, I want us to think about the world as really pre-K through life, and that education is a part of everyone's endeavor. We can no longer think about it as K through 12 and then college and then work. The educational enterprise is in everyone's best interest, but having it compacted so that we're all on the same wavelength and doing the same things in this kind of organic way is going to be the future for West Virginia. So I'll be here.
And Steve, I'd be delighted to come back again. And whenever you bring some former college professors together, it's one thing they love to do is be able to talk and pontificate. So I know I really relish my opportunities to continue to engage with our students here, the little bit of time that I can carve out to teach. But yeah, we're just we're living and breathing these topics day in and day out. It's what kind of revs our motor and gets us excited to get up every day, is to figure out how we can provide transformative experience for all types of learners to help people pursue their personal and professional goals. So we'll be happy to talk about that in all the different dimensions that you suggest at any time.
And with that, in addition to saying very sincerely and deeply thank you for the wisdom and insight that both of you bring, the leadership you provide in our state, the hope and inspiration that you give to all of us, I will just go to Brian Dayton for any concluding remarks that may need to be made. Kathy Thomas, thank you for managing the questions. We had a lot of questions in the queue. We simply ran out of time. We've had more questions that have come into the queue since I began talking, which probably means that I've raised more questions than answers when I talk. But Brian, with that, if I could, having said thank you to our two speakers, if I could go to you for any concluding business. And again, thank you, Dr. Roth and Dr. Gee. We appreciate you. We respect you. Leadership requires followership, and a lot of us would like to follow your lead. So with that, Brian.
Well, thank you, Steve, and Dr. Gee, Dr. Roth, again, thank you both so much. This was a great discussion. We had great participation from the chamber members. For those of you still listening, and for those who were unable to join today, we have recorded this, so we will be making that recording available as soon as possible. And I, for one, plan to go back and listen to it because there was just so much great information in it. So again, thank you both very much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in for the second part of our Virtual Business Summit series. Stay safe and stay healthy. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you.